Separation of substances. A substance is a very important term in science which includes all such kind of matter that cannot be separated into other kinds of matter by any physical process. There are many other substances such as air, seawater, soil, which contain more than one component. Such substances which contain more than one component are called mixtures. A large number of methods are available which can be used for separation of substances. Pure substances and mixtures. Many substances around us contain only one type of constituent particles. These are called pure substances. Their examples being iron, copper, water, salt, etc. On the other hand, a mixture contains two or more types of constituents which are present in any amount or any ratio. For example, air around us contains many gases such as nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and dust particles. Thus, air is a mixture containing all these constituents. A mixture is made up of two or more substances. These substances that make a mixture are called its components or constituents. Applying suitable methods that are based on their properties, we can separate the components of a mixture. Need for separation. Some mixtures, such as vegetables and fruits, can be used as such because they are useful for us. But materials such as wheat, rice, pulses, gram, and black pepper obtained from the nature cannot be used as such. They may contain dust particles, husk, insects, small pieces of stones, and other unwanted or harmful substances. Before using them in our homes, we separate the unwanted and harmful components present in them. Even the water we drink should be pure and should not contain any harmful substances. Thus, we can say that we carry out the separation of substances with the following purposes. To remove the unwanted components, for example, removing tea leaves after making tea, stones from pulses, straw from milk. To obtain the useful component, for getting wheat or rice grains after separating husk, dirt, etc. To improve the quality of substance, for example, removing water from milk for making sweets and removing water from vegetables during making the pickles. Separation process. Purpose for which we do the separation. What do we do with the separated components? Separate stones from rice. To separate two different but useful components, we throw away the solid components. Churning milk to obtain butter. To remove non-useful components, we throw away the impurities. Separate tea leaves. To remove impurities or harmful components, we use both the components. Methods of separation. There are several methods used for separating a mixture into its constituents. Let us study about some of the methods that are commonly used for the separation of the components of a mixture. Hand picking. This method is used only when any one of the components is present in small quantities and differs in color, shape, or size so that it can be picked up manually. This method is used for separating slightly larger sized impurities like the pieces of dirt, stone, husk, etc. from the grains of wheat, rice, pulses, etc. Threshing. You must have seen bundles of wheat or paddy stalks lying in fields after harvesting the crop. Stalks are dried in the sun before the grain is separated from them. Each stalk has many grain seeds attached to it. The process that is used to separate grain from stalks is threshing. In this process, the stalks are beaten to free the grain seeds. Sometimes threshing is done with the help of bullocks. Machines are also used to thresh large quantities of grain. Sieving. It is the process in which any mixture is passed through porous material. The smaller components of the mixture pass through the sieves and bigger components are left over the sieves. Sieving the wheat flour through a sieve allows fine particles of the flour to pass through the holes of the sieve while the bigger husk particles remain on the sieve. Winnowing. The method is commonly used to separate lighter husk particles from heavier grains or particles. In this method, the wheat grains containing husk are allowed to fall down from some height while the wind is blowing. The lighter husk particles are carried away by the wind and form a separate heap away from that of the heavier grains. Thus, the lighter husk particles get separated from the heavier grains. This process is known as winnowing. This method is used by farmers in fields as well as at a flour mill, atta chakki, to separate husk from grains. Sedimentation and decantation. You must have seen how pulses and rice is washed in your home. Water is added to them and dust or dirt dissolves in water. Since the pulses or rice grains are heavy, they settle down at the bottom of the container. This is called sedimentation. The water forms the upper layer, which is decanted. In decantation, the liquid forming the upper layer is carefully poured, leaving behind the settled solids, the second component, at the bottom of the container. The same principle is used for separating a mixture of two immiscible liquids. For example, cooking oil and water can be separated from each other. If such a mixture of two liquids is allowed to stand for some time, they form two separate layers. The two layers can either be separated by using decantation method or using a separating funnel. On carefully opening the stopcock of the separating funnel, water can be separated and collected in the beaker kept below the funnel. Loading. Many times we get muddy water from wells, taps, or other sources of drinking water. Such muddy water can be made clear by loading. The process in which an external agent is added to bring the process of sedimentation is known as loading. Muddy water, allume, impurities plus allume, plus clear water, dirt. External agent, dirt settles down. This process is carried out when the volume of water to be purified is large. If a piece of allume, fitkari, tied with a thread is swirled in such a water, then after some time, the water becomes clear on standing. The water becomes clear because the mud particles get loaded by the allume particles and become heavy. The loaded mud particles settle down at the bottom of the container. The water thus becomes clear and can be decanted for further use. Filtration. You must have observed how tea is prepared in your homes. after preparing tea, it is passed through a strainer, wire mesh, or a piece of cloth to separate the tea leaves. Tea leaves are bigger in size than the holes of the mesh or the pores of the cloth. Therefore, they are retained on the strainer, which works as filter. This process is a common example of filtration. Filtration is used to separate solid impurities from a liquid. Also, the shikanji, lemonade, is filtered to separate the seeds of the lemon. In cities, sewage water is filtered through big magnetic filters in order to retain large-sized solid materials and avoid choking of drains. Nowadays, modern water filters are used for filtering water. In this filter, special types of materials called resins are used for filtering of solid particles present in water. It is then passed through another filter in which harmful organisms present in water are killed by using ultraviolet rays. The water so obtained is safe for drinking. Evaporation. Seawater contains a large amount of salt dissolved in it. One of these salts is the common salt. To obtain common salt from seawater, the water from sea is collected in open, shallow pits during high tides. When seawater is allowed to stand in shallow pits, called lagoons, water slowly turns into water vapors by absorbing the heat of the sun. This process is called evaporation. Slowly, the whole of water evaporates, leaving behind the solid salts. These salts are then collected in heaps. Common salt is obtained from the mixture of salts by further purification. Magnetic separation. The property of attraction towards magnetic materials is useful in the separation of those materials from other substances which are not attracted towards a magnet. Thus, iron filings can be separated from a mixture of iron filings and sand by using a magnet. The magnet picks out only iron filings from the sand. Thus, the components of the mixture are separated. This process is known as magnetic separation. Churning. When milk is churned for some time, the lighter cream particles float on its surface, from where they can be separated easily. Similarly, churning of curd leads to the separation of butter, as the upper layer and the lower layer is obtained as the buttermilk. Thus, the lighter particles of the suspended solid, such as cream or butter, can be separated from a liquid using this technique, which is also known as centrifugation. The process of centrifugation is widely used in dairies to separate cream from milk. Milk is rotated at a very fast speed in a closed container. Cream collects in the center and, being lighter than milk, floats at the top of the mixture. The process of centrifugation is also used to remove dirt from the clothes in a washing machine. Separation using more than one method. A mixture that has more than two components requires a combination of several methods of separation. In such a situation, we need to use more than one of these methods. For example, if we have a mixture of salt, water, and sand, and we want to separate all these three substances, here, salt will dissolve in water and sand would settle down at the bottom of the container. The salt solution can be separated from sand by decantation or filtration process. Now the next step is to obtain salt and water from the decanted salt solution. Since water evaporates on heating, we can use evaporation process for this step. Similarly, the common salt we get from seawater is an impure salt. It is purified by using various methods. The impure sample is crushed, dissolved in water, filtered, evaporated, and then crystallized to get common salt free from impurities.